Piraha had big troubles doing that. What might be a simple exercise for a elementary school kid in other countries. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like that really does influence, that in those cases language really does influence the way we talk or certain competences.
Much thought about the role of language in influencing thought has been organized under a principle called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. It's based on the work of two men, one named Sapir, the other named Whorf.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The idea behind the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is that language influences, possibly even controls, thought. It's often understood to occur in two varieties. The strong variety will tell you that it is not possible to have a thought that is inexpressible in your language. And it sounds like that is the direction the researchers who studied the Pirara were taking, that if you don't have a word for a quantity greater than 2, you can't have an understanding of the quantity greater than 2 in that particular case. There's a weak version, though, which probably has more followers, and that version shows that, or that version postulates that language does not determine thought, but it influences and conditions and nudges it.
Thank you very much. Let me roll back a little bit, because you said that the strong Whorfian hypothesis, was it Whorfian? Sapir-Whorfian? Sorry. The strong hypothesis basically proclaims that you're not able to understand the meaning of a word, or that you're not able to comprehend the number 12, for example, if you don't know the word for it. Now, the book has a very interesting point about that. They say that the researchers came up with a theory basically explaining it as a personal relationship that the Piraha hunter has to his arrows. They take a lot of time making, and they have a personal relationship to each of the arrows, so they don't struggle with knowing how many they will have left, even though they maybe can't put it in words. The same way that maybe a composer can't tell you on the spot how many songs he has composed, because he has a personal relationship to each of the songs. Or if, for example, tell me how many couches have you moved around in all the houses you have lived, and how many pieces of furniture do you have?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd like to take a look at that book for myself, because I think I would enjoy reading it and learn from it. I want to ask you a question, though. To my knowledge, you are at least bilingual, obviously fluent in English, and German is your first language, possibly you speak others. So as a bilingual, at least person, do you find that you express yourself differently in different languages?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you, first of all, for the compliment. I'll let it up to the listener to decide whether I'm actually fluent in English or whether I still have some trouble. I would say that I do obviously use different words. I mean, it's a different language, but also avoid translations of words that I do have in German. For example, I'm trying to avoid the word hate, because, well, in the German language, it's a very normal thing to say, for example, to your friends, oh, I hate that guy, or I hate that, and I hate that. And here it's a very strong word, and I try avoiding it, especially in front of the kids. Obviously, cursing is viewed very differently in America than in Germany. In Germany, it's really normal to curse a lot. But those things are on the surface. I do also think that I kind of changed my character a little bit since I tried, or or since I spent the last 1.5 years almost exclusively speaking in English, I've become a lot more. Oh God, here. What have I become? What have I become?
Become a lot more aware of the subtleties of the way Americans say yes and no.
Yes, you're right. I would say I've become a lot more aware of body language and of when do people actually like me or when do they just pretend to like me, which is kind of sad. But no, I definitely think that that's something that has changed in my character, and I'm a lot more careful when I'm talking to people because of that directness that's suddenly missing in the English language. Another thing that came up to me, you are a very experienced person when it comes to different languages and cultures. If there was one language you could speak other than English, what would it be? What do you think, which language has certain advantages in certain topics, such as maybe music? For example, English is the language of science. Why is that, and what do you think about all of that?
That's a great question. A while ago, I tried to run down the origin of a quotation I've heard a few times. At first, I thought it was Jackie Kennedy who said something like, when she wanted to practice diplomacy, she spoke French, and when she wanted to think about love, she spoke Italian, and when she wanted to think about science, she spoke English. It wasn't Jackie Kennedy. The next lead I found was Catherine the Great. I don't know if it was Catherine the Great, but I think the principle is very interesting. Are some languages better suited for some purposes than others? I don't know the answer to that. As far as myself, which language I'd like to speak other than English, if I could, I think I would choose a non-Western language. I had the chance to study French for quite a while, and of course it was very interesting and exciting, but it wasn't as different from English as, say, Mandarin might be, or Japanese, or Korean, or an original African language. So I think I would like to go beyond the northern hemisphere, the western hemisphere, and look to Asia or possibly Africa to learn a language that's truly different from English.
Thank you very much. I have heard that quote too at some point, and I was I don't know who said it. I thought it was a Roman chancellor or Roman king. I'm not sure. I have thought about it a little bit though, and what came to my mind was, for some reason, a German rap. We have a huge rap scene in Germany, also in France and the UK, but there's almost no improvisational touch to it. There's almost no freestyle rap battles the same way that they are in America. Or, for example, if you take it further to Brazil, samba is a music that lives off improvisation and lives off feeling, and that doesn't really happen in Germany. What are your thoughts on that?
I would like to research that more, or at least read the findings of others who have researched it more. I wonder if people who speak languages that tend to have faster rates of utterance, more syllables per minute, have a different musical style than people who speak languages that tend to be said more slowly. Spanish, for example, has one of the highest rates of syllables per minute. So I wonder if someone who grows up speaking Spanish would say rap differently from someone who grows up speaking English, or if that person would improvise differently in playing jazz from someone who grows up speaking a slower language.
Now we have a question of a caller who sent in a voice message. I'm gonna play it really quick.
Hey, a couple of years ago I went to Australia, and when I was there I realized that sort of my behavior and my how I thought about things changed a bit by speaking another language. I'm normally from Germany, so my question to you is whether actual those kind of effects occur just when you speak another language, or is it also because you speak other dialects in a certain country?
I haven't studied that, but my first thought is that accents are more about the way others perceive us than the way we express ourselves. In America, for example, the southern accent can be perceived very differently in the north from the way it is in the south, in positive and negative ways. Then if you go to Britain, where we had the chance to live for a few years, of course, accents there take on a very different character. In Britain, accents are not as much about geography as they are about family and background and what you can call, for lack of better shorthand, one's role or place in society. In America, accents don't denote socioeconomic position or family history as much as they do in Britain. In fact, they don't matter much at all for that here. But here, accents based on geography can have a very profound role on the way others perceive us.
Is it a class thing in England? And could you answer that question with your best impression of English accent, please?
I am not so good at accents, so this is my best impression of an English accent, unfortunately. In Britain, class might be shorthand for everything it means. It's not just about money, though, the way class might be understood in America. It's about your family background, your access to resources, the number of generations you've had access to those resources, and especially about your educational history, your educational situation. I remember our children were in a private school in Britain, and one of the fathers from the school was speaking to his daughter after she'd come home one day, and she wasn't speaking in what he thought was an appropriate accent, and he said something to her that I'll never forget. It was something like, "Don't talk that way. I'm not paying all that money for you to learn to speak like that."
Wow. Well, I hope that answered the question of a caller. I think that has been it with our time. Thank you very much again, Charles, for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Also to the listeners, thank you, and feel free to join us next week when we'll be talking about foods around the world.